Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Helt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Clay Risher, and he's the managing director at TrueNorth Capital Partners. Welcome, Clay.
Thanks so much, Gary, for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Definitely. So, tell me your backstory. How did Clay? What was Clay's prior life before he became managing director?
It's funny. It's not a path for the weak, right? I mean, unfortunately, my wife and I don't have any children, so I've probably been able to take some risks in my career that most people, aren't willing to take or don't want to venture into it. But basically, I started out working for my father, who was a CFO or CEO of a publicly traded company called Exite Electronics, which was summarily bought by Eaton, which is now today owned by Eaton, the big conglomerate. And so I spent about 5 years selling OEM relationships with IBM and AT&T all over the world. So it's a great sort of comeuppance to business, and so I did that for about 5 years. We had some options that we sold the company. And then I started a marketing firm, a digital marketing firm with my brother-in-law and my sister. I actually ended up bringing my then girlfriend, now wife, into that business. And so we had about 20 full-time employees, and we ran that for about 10 years. And then I just got the itch to do something different. And I sold my shares back to my partners, and went actually briefly back into global sales for a corporation out of Austin, Texas, and then got involved in my own consulting firm. From there, I got into I was briefly in a biz, not briefly, 4 years in a biz dev role with RSM US. So and then my clientele started to become private equity, hedge funds, investment banks, and selling transactional advisory services and things of that nature. And so I basically decided at one point, I said, well, I'm dealing with these guys all day long, private equity and investment banking. They all pull their pants on, one leg at a time. I'm pretty sure I can do this. And so I started soliciting some of my clients, namely TrueNorth Capital Partners, if they might consider bringing me on as a business developer. And it just so happened that Fred Rossetti and Jeff Gaynor and Yoshi over at TrueNorth offered a job. They actually offered a job to me in January of 20. And then we all know what happened by March of 20, but they stuck by their offer. And so here I am today. And I love the firm, and I love the people I work with. And I love my clients as much as you can love clients sometimes, right? They're hard to love sometimes.
Right. Kind of what's the story behind TrueNorth? I mean, what's their their emphasis and their kind of their philosophy?
Great question. We are a boutique investment bank. We focus on buy and sell side M&A advisory. We do capital raises, we do restructurings, and thank God we haven't done a lot of them in the recent years, but we do bankruptcies and 363 sales and Article 9. I got involved in an Article 9 deal last year. And so we're generalists. And I think, the philosophy is we've probably collectively done over 600 deals at this point. Fred and Jeff, who really started the original firm, are in their 60s now. And so we have a lot of seasoned professionals. And I think our philosophy is, we don't want to take on assignments that we aren't successful for our clients, and where the potential is, we don't succeed for them, because that just is, it's just such a small world in what we do. I think a key differentiator, if you're sort of asking that question, is we have a very specific buy side to our business. That's about 60% of our business overall year to year. And specifically, it's Japanese trading firms. So Itochu, Marubeni, Minebea, Mitsui are all clients of ours, and consistently engaging us to find and execute on all sorts of different companies and all sorts of different verticals. I mean, just this past year alone, I've been on animal health engagements. I've been on, I just am actually actively working on building products distribution engagement with one of my large Japanese clients. We are working on an HVAC distribution deal right now. So it's always interesting. There's just a constant flow of these buy side engagements, and so every day we're learning something new and meeting some new people and grinding to get deals done.
What, looking at all the deals that you've done, I guess what's the most memorable one, or the one that has meant the most to you?
I think it would have to be my first one, right? And it was, as I mentioned, I think I technically started in April of 2020, and then we still didn't know what was going on. We
Right.
thought if you went outside and breathed the air, you were going to spontaneously explode, right? In the good old days. And so,
Right.
but slowly, man, the capital markets started, thundering, and we were able to, pump up the Zooms and get deals done. And so my very first deal was with a client of ours that's in the leisure products business in the Southeast, and he wanted to branch out into boats or RVs at the time. And boat companies, had a big lift during COVID, as did RV companies. And so I was really proud of myself, because our analyst had dug up these target companies, and it was just no, business is too good, And then I ended up calling my client back and saying, hey, have you thought about golf carts, right, as a business? And he said, I've been thinking about it. We're another part of my business is high-end residential real estate development, right? And the kind of real estate developments where people are driving around on golf carts. So I, kind of dug in and went behind enemy lines and did my own research, and found a really cool EV ATV company in Georgia. And my client flew down in his own plane, kicked the tires on it. His wife loved the deal, and so I think we had that wrapped up and closed within like 60 days. It was, and I was like, I had a little bit of an imposter syndrome, because I was like, I'm an investment banker now, but I don't really, I'm not sure how all this operates, right? So thank God, Fred Rossetti took me in and was so helpful to me. And he and I were the only guys going to the office during COVID, and we'd sit a mile apart from each other and scream over and say, how's it going? And but it was, I look back on that as one of the fondest memories I've had in business. And so, and it was in a time when you didn't know what was happening, the next day. And so that's a long-winded answer, but I hope I didn't.
No. That's, I think that's pretty cool that it's one of those things that, I don't want to say you backed into it, but you backed into it because, you weren't able to find exactly what the client wanted, but you found something else and they ended up loving it, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Especially during a trying time, because people were afraid to meet at that point in time, in person at least. So
100%, yeah. And so as fate had it, and then I guess that was just a sign from God that I should stay where I am and keep going. And I've been growing with the firm, and they've been very, very supportive. And and very, very helpful. And typically it's a kind of a sharp elbowed, siloed business, investment banking. But I think our group is everybody's mindful and respectful of each other in their own way. I mean, everybody's busy, but if you have a question or it's a type of deal you've never worked on, or have a question about a restructuring, we have a guy, Jeff Gaynor, who's one of the founders. He's just brilliant there, and so you can pop over in his desk and ask him, and it's good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Earlier you talked about the Japanese markets that you deal with and stuff like that. How has the foreign market influenced what you're doing?
Great question. I mean, this year, 23 was very anomalistic for the sell side. Just kind of went anemic, right? You had the high cost of capital, you had interest rates going up, you had valuations going down. So if generally, if you didn't have to sell your business last year, you didn't, right?
Right.
And so where, specifically, if you just want to talk about Japan, that became a boom for our buy side because, they're all out, these are $100 billion companies, right? 45,000, 100,000 people across the globe in all sorts of diverse businesses. And they want to go on a shopping spree. So the buy side just lit up, and the sell side kind of, we cleared out a few deals that were carrying over. And so, if you want to look at it, a macro type of view, when the sell side goes down here in the States, the buy side goes up, I think at a global level too. So we're actually trying to build out a similar program in Singapore at this time. We have a guy we just brought on, great guy, Caleb Chu, and he is finishing up his PhD in Singapore. So he goes back and forth to Singapore all the time. And we've already hired another guy that's actually resides in Singapore, and we're hoping to start to pull some buy sides out of Hong Kong and maybe China, Singapore. And so to be globally diverse and the size firm we are, I think is a real testament to the vision of Jeff and Fred and Yoshi and Nick and Dean Miltimore and the other partners in the firm.
No, so the size deals, I mean, talk about the size deals that you guys do from a dollar standpoint.
Some of us are more I like any kind of deal, right? I'm kind of going to take all comers, right? But the more experienced guys, they like to work on the woolly mammoths, right? So, but I think as a firm, we're in that 3 mil to 15 mil EBITDA type deals. We 250 million top line. We've done, I didn't work on it, but I believe Fred and the other guys have done $1 billion enterprise value deal at one point in time. But my deal sizes are growing, but I still love, I love doing the little add-on deals for the private equity firms, and it's a quick turn, and you get a little referral fee or whatever it is, and you move on. And so I like to do my pie chart of opportunity as big deals, it all sort of evens out, right? And so, but you have to really, really be mindful of your time, because a lot of people are willing to, I'm sure in your business as well, Gary, there's a lot of people that are willing to utilize a lot of your time that, it's, and you don't want to be, hey, what's in it for me, right? I don't want to be that archetypal, Wall Street guy, right? But at some point you got to say what's in it for me, right? And so,
I mean, and that's the thing that I think lots of times people don't understand is that, our commodity is our time.
100%.
And if somebody's monopolizing our time and we're not being compensated for it, what's all the lost opportunity costs that we're incurring because of it? And I think that lots of times people don't see that.
Absolutely. And I think the real sort of issue is, people like you and people that I work with, we're very inquisitive people, right? So we love to hear about anything that's really
Right.
interesting. And there's a lot of interesting stuff in this business, but you got to kind of weed out, this is really interesting, but it's not paying me anything,
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, I get approached all the time, like exotic investments, real estate, and you're like, oh my God, I want to check this out, but what is this actually going to yield? And you know what I mean?
Right. Right. Have you noticed, or is there a trend? It seemed like, pre 2000 or pre 2020, there seemed to be that the private equity and people, the multiple and the EBITDA was like, from what I was seeing, was like, to me, was extremely high. And
Mm-hmm.
and now it seems like it's kind of gone back down. Was that because money was so cheap at that time, that then that's why that was, people were paying I'm going to say, a premium for businesses that they were buying, or can you talk about that a little bit?
I think, I definitely think you're right about, cheap money. I was just talking to this guy last night and said, we have a whole generation of people that think that 0%, that 0% interest or 2% interest is reality, right? I mean, I
Right.
bought my first house, it was like 10% interest, right? And and so, I think that drove a lot of it. I certainly know the spike. I can absolutely attribute the spike during COVID to PPP,
Yeah.
to idle, to to valuations being bumped up. But that because you've now flooded the market with cash, right? And in many instances, forgivable
Yes.
debt, right?
Yeah.
And so why not, right? But I think we're getting down to more realistic valuations right now. It sounds like the Fed's going to hold steady on interest rates, and probably maybe drop them towards the end of the year. But you can't, as I always say, the sidewalks of Wall Street are paved with the bones of speculators
Yeah.
and futurists and whatever. I just try to take it one day at a time.
I mean, where do you see, with True North, where do you see the business really shifting to, or do you see it more staying status quo?
Well, I think we're doing a good job of adding a lot of diversity. We're bringing on a lot of young people, a lot of female young people, which is great. And it's a very diverse culture for a very small firm, which is really cool. I think we're looking at branching out into new markets, like Singapore, as I was saying, maybe China. Hong Kong, I realize is part of China, but it seems to be a little bit more approachable than sort of
Yeah.
mainland China at this point.
Right.
Um, I think we're bringing in other bankers who have experience that the partners and directors heretofore didn't necessarily have. Like we have a guy who's now focused on TMT banking, so he's doing a lot of SaaS software deals and cyber deals, whereas sort of the previous generations were focused on more, um, traditional value
Yeah.
businesses. Let me put it that way, right? And so upstream, downstream, whatever. It's food, it's
Brick and
oil
mortar.
and gas. It's
Right.
So I think you're absolutely insane not to be paying attention to AI and its implications, good or bad. I mean, and healthcare. Where do you start? I mean, that thing is so broken. It's I mean, so I'd like to think that we can, with our work, have positive impacts on macro economical trends in industries that really need some help right now.
Yeah. I mean, so many things that I'm seeing, that traditionally were, I'm going to say, fee for service type stuff, is
Mhm.
going more towards a subscription basis.
Mhm.
And I think that that's really going to change a lot of our economy. But how do on your side of things, how do you see that change thing? Because to me, from a where it seems like lots of times the business is running, the problem is cash flow. And this seems to be, on the subscription basis is going to get them where, their cash flow should be much better because the beginning of the month they're getting, their cash infusion. Kind of where do you see that that trend happening, and do you think it's going to happen in more industries that it's not traditional for?
Yeah, I think it's sort of tech-enabled services, right? So now, now I always give this example. A friend of mine was telling me, I don't know, do you have oil heat in your home where you have to go downstairs and
No, I don't. I don't, but I remember when, my grandparents and my mom had it, when I was a kid.
So it's still pretty ubiquitous up here in the Northeast, and so I just dreaded the monthly walk down the stairs. Hopefully one of the stairs don't break.
Yeah.
Hopefully I don't step on a rat, or get a cobweb in the face, right?
Right.
To check the oil level on the tank, right? Because you'd have to go eyeball that thing.
Yep.
And some kid, I think he was at UConn, thought of this. It's basically an IoT, Internet of Things type of application, right? So you got a little sensor in this thing, you screw it on top where the old measuring stick was, and you download the app, and you can look at it anytime you want. It'll tell you, is it a half full? Is it quarter full? Is it, I mean, that there's so much opportunity to take these sort of archaic but necessary businesses and put them online, and then, to your point, the ARR, annual recurring revenue models, the monthly recurring revenue models, private equity loves these guys, right? And they're snapping up, lawn maintenance businesses, right? And oil and, heating, HVAC businesses, because all those guys are starting to become to offer sort of IoT services, right? And all that is, you're right. Hey, not only am I going to lease my equipment, because you can do that now instead of like coming up front with all this money to do the vents and redo your AC or whatever, you can finance that all out. It's in a monthly recurring, payment. And so you certainly, I think you can manage your cash flows a lot better. It's funny, I was also having a very interesting conversation with a guy yesterday who's started an AR software company that functions kind of the same way, that really, you say you've got big spreads in your accounts receivable, right? And this thing just sort of aggregate. I mean, it's a little frightening because I like to pay my bills a little late just because, you're paying less interest on those things than you're making in the market, right? And so you try to hedge that a little bit. And a friend of mine just taught me this strategy, so I'm trying to implement it. But I think, yeah, it's going to be good for cash flow, for sure. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I just wonder, with it, especially the new groups that are getting into it, if they've really thought through it, because it's like, okay, I get how many ever people that are doing this, and then what happens when it's like, okay, everybody needs service at once?
Yes.
Are you going to be able to, to have the staff to be able to handle all of that? And I think that's where somebody's got to be much smarter than I am, is able to help write those contracts that say, okay, hey, depending on what service you have, this is how quick we can get to you, type thing. Because otherwise, it's going to put people out of business, because so many people need it at once, and you can't facilitate it.
Yeah.
And see what happens there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's funny. I'll give you an example. I won't mention the company's name, but my wife gave me a subscription to it's a kind of a go ahead and say it. I'm in touch with my feminine side, but
There you go.
it's like a nail salon, and you can go get a haircut and a shave for men, right?
Right.
And it's like a man cave. You got your own little television screen there. You can drink a tequila and a beer and all that stuff. And at face value, it seems really, really cool. but it's app driven, right? They've got my credit card, so they're charging my credit card once a month.
Right.
I can't get an appointment ever
Uh,
on the app, right? And
yeah.
so to your point, it's great if everything becomes automated, but let's not forget about, mankind here,
Yeah.
right? So I think you're right.
Yeah. I think, you talk about that. It's like I have a subscription to a local IV therapy.
Yeah.
And the couple that owns it is awesome. And they when they first came out, they had some issues with their apps and stuff like that, and people couldn't get things booked. And
Hmm.
they were they were like, hey, just call me, I'll take care of it type thing.
Hmm.
And they had plenty of appointments available. It's just that the app wasn't working properly. And it's like, and if it wasn't for that they are who they are and they were able to, spin it in a way to and get it fixed and make sure that all the clients are taken care of. Now their applications are working properly, but that's same thing. It's like, okay, the systems aren't working properly.
Hmm.
But again, it's I always say technology is great when it works.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm with you. I really am. Well, I shouldn't say I'm with you. My viewpoint on AI is we need to be very careful with it, and all this automation of everything, because I think that's just an excellent point you made, and I really hadn't thought about it that way. But it's like you can build faster and faster systems, but if at the end of the day it's contingent on human presence, you kind of, it's a zero sum game, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I think
interesting.
we could talk for days about AI and the
Exactly.
good and the bad.
Yeah.
And I really think that so many businesses, are going to get to the point where they rely on AI so much. And,
Mhm.
is it truly going to be the best thing for them?
Mhm.
Because we do some college planning and things like that, and
Mhm.
talked with some of the admissions counselors and stuff like that, and they're like, we can tell when these kids are sending in their essays and stuff like that have been AI generated and stuff like that. I do a lot of stuff with the local schools, and same thing, they're like, yeah, we can tell when these kids are having AI generate these reports for them and stuff like that, and the kids think that they're getting around it.
Mhm.
It's so much stuff, with banking fraud and everything else. A
Mhm.
lot of it's AI driven, and it's scary that what can be done. And we all have to be so careful with what we're doing to make sure.
100%. I just read Michael Lewis's latest book on Sam Bankman-Fried and the whole crypto thing. And it's funny because we were, even our little firm, took on a small crypto cap raise, and it's just nuts what happens when you get sort of the noxious mix of technologists come geniuses, an uh, an uneducated target audience to some degree, as far as nobody really understood the
Right.
valuations, and the kind of wholesale schemes that can be created. It's really, you're really, it is frightening. And we're spending so much time in Washington polarizing each other, on whatever side of the aisle you line up on, and we need to be really thinking about these kind of things. I mean, it's a massive, there's massive impact here, and I don't know if anybody's even, steering the bus,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
from
I mean, what
so.
was it? Just the other week, what was it with the New Hampshire primary that
Mhm.
there was an AI generated robocall supposedly from Biden that supposedly
Mhm.
wasn't him. So it's
Right.
just, it's amazing. I mean, the stuff that can do, and it's scary because they can have the exact like and image and sound and everything else, and it's hard to differentiate. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but I'm starting to feel like, there might be some, I'm hoping some sort of reprise of analog nation starting to surface here. I'm kind of, I don't know about you, but my eyes are blood red at the end of every day. I'm tired of crouching. I've got like a knot on my thumb from texting, and I'm like, what's going on? What are we doing? Right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you say that, and it's funny because I was at the chiropractor the other day, and we were just talking, and he said that he sees more and more people come in there because they're so hunched over all the time on their phones and stuff
Yeah.
that people are having more, more neck and upper shoulder issues with that, because of doing that.
I actually found the name for it yesterday because I am having problems. It's called text neck.
Oh,
You can
gee,
Google it.
that's funny. That's funny.
So,
So Clay, we've covered a bunch of stuff,
sure.
and I know we could definitely go on and on about this because
Mhm.
I find what you guys do fascinating because I really like the idea of being able to go out there and find that deal and then you're I mean to me you're a matchmaker you're
Mhm.
finding somebody who wants to buy somebody who wants to sell and getting them together.
Mhm.
What have I not asked you that you wish I had?
That's a great question. I think it was pretty comprehensive. I think if anything, kind of what motivates me day to day, and I can answer that, but I think it's just being a lifelong learner, right? And always every day is an opportunity to meet somebody or learn something that is empowering and useful, and so maybe that's the question. I don't know.
Yeah, tell us what is it that gets Clay up in the morning, gets him excited about his day and
Yeah.
talking with people.
I think when I switched from the what I'm going to earn today to what I'm going to learn today,
Mhm.
the world just completely opened up, and I guess I wish I could impart that to anybody who's still going to a job, thinking about the paycheck. I think if you just stop uh, and really kind of spend some time trying to figure out what it is that motivates you, the path opens up, right? And the
Right,
people show up. And I just fought so hard at I guess my dad had such a big influence on me. He was a very big personality CEO type. Everybody loved him, and I thought, well, that's what I want to be. But he was great at that, right? And I'm good
right,
at being Clay. And so unfortunately, he passed a couple years ago, and it was the worst of times and the best of times because I kind of unfortunately figured out late, who I am, what I want, and what interests me. And so I think you'll never be insolvent in your soul or probably in your bank if you take the attitude of just as we were speaking of before we even got on this call, I don't know everything. I don't even profess to know everything,
right.
but I'm willing to learn, right?
Yeah,
So be a student of life, right?
yeah. You probably learned way more about EV and golf carts than you ever thought you would know when you did your first deal.
It is. There's another great thing about this business. It's like, you get sucked into a deal and you know nothing about this product or how any of it works. And then by the, second or third month, you're pretty good to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Clay, if people like what they hear, they want to learn more about you and True North, or they're thinking about, hey, I want to expand my business or even sell. How can they get in touch with you to talk to you?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide this information, Gary. So my email, so our website, our True North's website is www.truenorthcp.com. My personal email is CRISHER@truenorthcp.com. And my telephone number is 203-817-0286 at the office.
Great. Yeah, don't give out your cell.
People have it anyway. All the political parties seem to
Yes,
have it.
they do. Yes, they do. So, Clay, I really appreciate your time. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Look forward to having you back on the show again in the future to talk more. As things develop for you and for the economy.
Thanks so much, Gary. It's a pleasure, and definitely going to circle back with you. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And thank you very much. I've learned a lot, and I've had a lot of fun. So thank you.
Great, great. Thank you. So
All
this
right.
week, my guest was Clay Risher, and he's the managing director at TrueNorth Capital Partners. I'll see you guys next week.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.